The kids are running amok downstairs, chasing the dogs and playing ball games in the house. It's a rainy day here, so I'm letting them go crazy. So if you hear any shenanigans, I can only apologise. And I'm filming this in my daughter's bedroom as well, just trying to get a little bit of privacy while they're all turning the house upside down. Hi everyone, I'm here today to talk about a couple of books that I have read recently. I know my last review was of the Prince Harry book. That's actually the last book that I read, so these are books that I read before that. But I thought that I would just sort of group them together because we're in February already. So these are the rest of the books that I read in January. The first one is this one. This is The Thursday Murder Club, and I've been recommended this so many times over the years. It has been very popular since it came out, and a lot of people have absolutely loved it, and because of that, there was something about the hype of it all that put me off reading it, which is weird because normally I want to read a hype book, but for some reason there was just, I don't know, I just felt pressure. So I put off reading this one for ages, but I eventually got around to it and I'm glad that I did. I very much enjoyed it. So this book follows a retirement village where we have a group of people who have enjoyed elements of true crime or working in the industry themselves when they were younger, and they just sort of meet up every Thursday in their Thursday Murder Club, and they go over cold cases and try and see if they can bring light to any cases that they feel may have been overlooked. And they seem quite an interesting cast of characters, and they all seem to bring something entirely different to the table. And so at the beginning of the book, they're trying to solve the murder of a woman who it appears was murdered by her boyfriend. And whilst they are sort of deeply delving into that case and everything that may have been missed, an actual murder happens right on their doorstep. They find themselves thrown into an ongoing case, and they manage to place themselves right in the middle of it all, and it is a fantastic read. This was funny and also touching and sad in parts. It deals with getting older and how things change as you get older, and I've heard a lot of people talk about the invisibility and how as you get older people just start to overlook you, and I'm not quite there yet, but I know that I'm not as visible now to people as when I was in my 20s. I've noticed that, and so it's just it hit me in a place where it just made me feel a bit sad. So it just hit me in a different place, and I think it hit me differently reading this in my 30s if I'd read it in my 20s. And I liked that. I liked how it just sort of spoke to me in that way. I liked some characters in this book more than others. Some of them were slightly flawed characters, which I thought was very realistic to how people are in society in general. You're not going to like everybody, and there will be some people who do things that you don't think are your kind of thing. I have to say I do enjoy that element being incorporated into a book, because not everybody is this sort of perfect character without any flaws. I do enjoy it when an author can bring forth characters who feel more 3D and actually feel like real people. So for that reason, I very much enjoyed it, and I gave this 4 out of 5 stars, and I'm very much looking forward to the sequels. Now, the next book that I read is this one. This is A Slow Fire Burning by Paula Hawkins. I remember hauling this last year because I bought the Waterstones sprayed edge version, but I never got round to reading it because last year was crazy. So I am working through my shelves at the minute, just picking one after the other that I haven't read. And so I picked this one up, and I'm glad that I did. This one starts off with a horrific murder on a houseboat, and the person who is dead has been basically slain in their own boat and left there in a pool of their own blood. And from there we are introduced to a colourful cast of characters who all intrinsically entwine with the deceased, and we start to play a bit of a cat and mouse game of wondering who committed the murder. This is another book with a cast of characters who aren't all likeable, and Paula Hawkins is fantastic at writing those sort of flawed characters, and I do think that having various degrees of likability in the cast of characters who are essentially suspects makes it harder to guess who you think is going to be the person who did it, because there are various degrees of shadiness within people's characters. It really helps the reader to be surprised by the overall outcome. One thing that I will say though, and again it's something that I've become familiar with the author, is that there were a lot of characters within this book, and sometimes I became confused over who was who, and found it hard to remember how different people linked to each other. Perhaps if you read this all in one sitting, it might not be such an issue, but for me, I read a couple of chapters, put it down, go to work, have a couple of days where I'm working, play with the children, do work on my online shop, do all sorts of different things, and when I come back to pick it up, sometimes I've forgotten who different people are. That is the only sort of criticism that I have of this book. And the final book that I've got is this one. This is Have I Told You Already by Lauren Graham. And this was sent to me by my friend Bridget to read. And I love anything to do with Lauren Graham. And let's be honest, it comes from the Gilmore Girls. I have an obsession with the Gilmore Girls, and I have done for many, many years. I loved Gilmore Girls. I can remember watching it as a child when it first came out and loving it. And so I always want to read more about the lives and the people behind that show, and so I was very excited to read this one. It's basically a collection of essays and sort of stories that she hasn't shared with people yet, and she wants to make sure she tells everybody her different anecdotes. The stories have no real link to one another other than to sort of serve as an entertaining memoir, and it's almost like going for a coffee with Lauren Graham and her just telling you something that happened to her in the past, and you would enjoy hearing about it. And I could almost hear a voice when I was reading through the words of this. It sort of came out exactly as you hear her speak. Lauren Graham seems to have a very colourful and also relatable life. Despite having a complete different life to my own, I find her stories relatable in a strange way, and I very much enjoyed this one. I really did. So there we go, those are the books that I've read recently, and I would love to know if you've read any of them, and I'd love to know if you're going to, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.